Sam. Thanks for joining me. We're officially live. I'll start by giving the floor to you. Why don't you tell the audience about, I guess, your company, your newsletter, what you're growing online?
Yeah, all right. So very briefly, I have two different newsletters. I have one on Substack where I write long form content. I post one article a week there. And then I have another newsletter on the Beehive platform, which is twice a week. And I share investing content to all my readers. So it's basically just like a collection of different links from the internet, kind of short form content and not very long. And that's
Very,
called the Rollup.
very nice. And then I'm curious, maybe we could like back up a little bit because I know before we were recording, you told me, hey, you live in Bali and you're starting these newsletters. So how did you get to this point? Were you working a regular corporate job beforehand and you decided to kind of start your own venture, or how did this come to be?
No, I've never had a corporate job in my life. After I graduated from university, I moved to Russia to teach English, and I learned to speak Russian there. And after that experience, that was the closest I ever had to a traditional job with human resources department and a boss
Mm-hmm.
and performance reviews and stuff. And so after that, I didn't like that, and I decided that I would never work that type of job again. So I freelanced. I was freelancing for many years, and I was doing that until last year. I was working for a tech company, and I was laid off. I was doing good work. I was getting promotions, but it was just part of the general economic downturn. I was laid off, and that's when I decided to start this newsletter. That was, I don't know, 14 months ago. And so I've been working on that ever since. And yeah, as you said, I've been living in Bali for the last couple of years.
Very
And
cool. And
yeah,
yeah.
that's how I got here.
And then so why did you pick a newsletter? How do you go from freelancing to a newsletter? Do you have some insight into that path?
Yeah, well, I've always been writing. So I was always doing SEO articles for the last almost decade now. So I've always been a writer. So newsletter was a perfect fit. I've tried other stuff in the past. I actually had my own podcast very briefly, and that didn't really work. I wasn't really into it. But a newsletter made a lot of sense for me. It has writing, and I love to do graphic design. I love to do web design. And so all of those skills coalesced into a newsletter being the perfect outlet for me to work on. Made a lot of sense.
Oh no. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay,
You're
sorry,
good.
you froze up on me a little bit, but you're saying that it fit well to your skill set, graphic design, writing, etc., and then that's why you essentially went into building a newsletter.
Yeah, yeah. And it was everything. It took a whole bunch of different disparate skills that I had and combined them into one. And for me, that worked out really well. It's
Very nice.
perfect.
And then, I mean, do you kind of have your eyes on like an end game? Because I don't know a ton about what it takes to constantly produce content for a newsletter, have a successful newsletter. But I mean, I've heard stories online where people build an audience with a newsletter and then, put it up for sale for, millions of dollars. I mean, is that an end goal? Is that what it also attracted you to the space, or? Um,
No, no. For me, selling is not an end goal. I would prefer to have something that generates income every month. I need a way to make money. And also, I think we hear a lot of the stories about those newsletters that were sold for millions of dollars. And I think that was more of a 2021, 2022 thing, part of
mm,
the everything bubble in there. I don't think a lot of that is happening anymore. I think advertising rates in newsletters have gone down, acquisition costs have gone down. In other words, what companies are willing to pay for newsletters. So if you're
mm,
writing a newsletter with the goal of selling it for like $1 million after 12 months, I don't think that's going to happen for you. It'll maybe for very few people who are incredibly lucky, but I don't think that can be your end goal. So for me, I'm writing this because I want to have a steady source of income, and it's something that I'm looking at doing for many years, and I'm,
mm,
I'm committed to that. So selling out is not the end goal, but what I am focused on right now is 100% of both of these newsletters, and I do all of the work myself. And the next step for me will be bringing in someone to help me with some of the more mundane tasks, so that I can
Mhm.
focus more on growth, and just improving the newsletter versus doing the daily tasks.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, to outsource as soon as you can. And then, so I'm curious, can you go over again what your posting schedule is? Sorry, I know you mentioned that you're on Substack and Beehive, but so how many times a week are you producing content or sending out a newsletter?
So for my Beehive newsletter, which is the short form, that's twice a week. That's every Thursday and Sunday. And then on
Hmm.
Substack, I post a long form article every Saturday. And all of this takes a lot of time. I'm only able to do this because this is my full time job, working on these two newsletters. I would never recommend someone try to do two newsletters at the same time if they're doing anything else in their life. It's insane and hectic and a lot of work.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes into my next question. I mean, how are you consistently coming up with content to meet that schedule? If you can provide any insight into that process.
Well, for Substack, I do a lot of book reviews, so I read a lot, and that's a source of those are topics I can talk about. And then it's just whatever I'm thinking about that week, I'll write about. So it's usually pretty easy to come up with an article on Substack. And then for my short form newsletter, the Rollup, I'm subscribed to, I don't know, 25 or 30 other newsletters where I'm always looking through their content to find out what they're sharing. I find the best content from there. I'm looking on YouTube, on Twitter, I'm on Substack. I have I basically have 50 or 60 different channels and newsletters that I
Hmm.
follow, and I look at my job as finding the best content out of everything on there and then putting it together into one newsletter and sending it out.
And can you break down what is included in a short form newsletter, that the roll up that you produce in Beehive? What is the structure? Is it just multiple sections with a different, bullet point or high level excerpt of something that's a link to an external article? What does it consist of?
Yeah, so I have different sections. I have, like you said, there's a few bullet points, like brief things, like maybe check out this Twitter thread, or I found this interesting new website. Like last week, I found this website that shares, I think it's pretty cool, this news story from a left leaning perspective, right leaning, and center. And so you can see
Mm.
the same story from different biases. So I thought that was interesting. So I'll share something like that. Then I have another section where I'll share the most interesting articles, another section for YouTube, like the best podcasts that I found.
Mm.
I share my favorite AI image that I found. I just added a new section where I'm doing an insider trade. Like, what was the biggest insider trade from the last week? Like, the CEO of NVIDIA just dumped $100 million worth of stock in the last 2 weeks.
Mm.
So I'll share something like that. So yeah, I just have a whole bunch of different sections with different topics that I'll share in there. That's how that works.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just trying to formulate it. And then, so does it ever feel, you said you want to do this for a long time. Does it ever feel daunting to you to think that, okay, like I'm going to do this for 10 years and I'm just going to consistently have to find content and curate content, or is it not as daunting as it seems?
No, it's absolutely daunting.
Okay.
It's a huge thing. I think about it all the time, and so that's part of bringing in people to help me. I'm going to, over the next couple of years, I'll be trying to automate as much of it as I can. By automate, I mean pass it off to someone else, have someone else help me um, create this thing. And so, ideally, what I would just like to do is do a little bit of writing on each on every edition of the newsletter. I want to do the writing, but I can have other people set up all the other sections and find the links and put it together and talk to advertisers. And so there's a lot that I can hand off to other people. And then if I still have to do 25% of the work, that's acceptable for me. I can
Yeah.
make that
I think
happen.
that's a good plan. And so I just kind of want to talk about how that would change your life, right? If you're only doing 25% of the work that you're doing now, does it what is your workload currently, and then what do you want it to look like in the future when you're able to hire some help?
Um, yeah. So the problem with how I'm doing this now is that I have to do all of the small little tasks that take up my time that I should not be doing, because when you have to do all of the minutia, it doesn't leave a lot of time to think about the bigger picture or growth or how you can make your newsletter better. And
Hmm.
so as I bring in people to do those smaller tasks, it will let me focus more on gaining new subscribers more efficiently, paying less for new subscribers, how I can make the newsletter better, how I can. Another big thing is going to be ad sales. Like I have to focus on ad sales and bringing in new advertisers. And every advertiser maybe only buys one or two slots in the newsletter, so that's figuring out new advertisers is a constant battle too. So by automating the smaller tasks, it's just going to give me the time I need to focus on the bigger picture, which is going to be amazing. That's going to let me take this to the next level.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Maybe we can kind of shift to what that looks like because I'm curious. Like maybe we can talk about customer acquisition. And so how does one approach, like if you can think back to day one when you were starting this, like what was your strategy to say, okay, I'm going to get that first subscriber by doing this, and then what did you do to get that first subscriber?
Yeah, so we can break that into two parts. When I started, I just had the one newsletter, and that was on Substack. And
Mm,
Substack has issues. It doesn't allow for outside integration, and it's kind of more of a beginner's newsletter platform in some ways. But what it does really, really well is it lets you pick up subscribers. It has an entire network built in to help gain subscribers, gain readers for you. And so it's fantastic at that. I think it's the best in the game right now. And so as I started publishing on Substack, I was gaining new subscribers through their network, and I was also promoting my work on Twitter and gaining some subscribers there. And so that was all organic. The first couple hundred readers I picked up was 100% organic. And then at that point, I decided to break into two different newsletters just because Substack really doesn't have any tools that you can integrate with it. It doesn't allow API access, and it's just really restricted in what it does. So that's why I
mm.
decided to move my short form newsletter over to Beehive, which has API access and outside integrations. And from there, that allowed me to start doing paid acquisition. And I started with Spark Loops, a Spark Loops integration where you can pay to get new subscribers. By Spark Loops, you set a price, say $2 per subscriber, and other newsletters will refer subscribers to you. And I did that for a while. I picked up many thousands of subscribers that way. And then I transitioned to Twitter, which is what I'm doing now, Twitter advertising to pick up new subscribers.
And it's yeah, so I've never heard of Spark Loops. Maybe it's just essentially connecting you with other newsletters, and then you're essentially will be featured in their newsletter as an ad saying, hey, if you like my
Mhm.
newsletter, check out the Rollup. You may like that as well. And then people subscribe that way.
Uh, you can do that, but that's not really how it works. It's more of so let's say there's a large newsletter that's doing a bunch of paid acquisition on Facebook. And so someone comes from Facebook, signs up for the newsletter, and then as soon as they sign up, a box will pop up that says, hey, you signed up for our newsletter. I think you'll like these other newsletters too. And that
Mm,
person has the option to click on those newsletters and sign up for them. And that's basically what Spark Loops is doing. So when someone signs up for a newsletter, they have the option to sign up for other ones, and then you're paying to have your newsletter featured in there. So I would pay to have the Rollup featured in there and pick up subscribers that way.
got it.
And this
Okay.
this is this has become really popular. A lot of people are doing this.
And how successful was that for you, right? I think so. Maybe if we can kind of chronologically go through it, Substack got you a couple hundred organically, and then are you able to quantify with Spark Loops and then also Twitter on in terms of like number of readers or subscribers it was able to get
Yeah,
you?
yeah. I mean, Spark Loops will get you all of the subscribers you could ever want. It's just how much money do you have? You could you can ride that train for as long as your wallet holds out.
Hmm.
I picked up, I don't know, 5 or 6 thousand subscribers that way, maybe more. I don't know the exact number. But one of the things I realized over time, is that the subscribers you get that way tend to not be very engaged. They're not your most loyal readers. So after a while, it wasn't really worth it for me to do that. Now, other newsletters might be different in how they're approaching their audience, but for me, it just wasn't worth it because I wasn't getting very engaged subscribers,
Hmm.
which is why I stopped there. And I moved over to Twitter. And so now with Twitter, I'm doing ads and then I can make money from Spark Loops. So I switched that whole formula around where I'm doing paid acquisition with Twitter and then I can make money from Spark Loops as I refer subscribers to other newsletters. And I've picked up thousands, 5 or 6 thousand new readers from Twitter already. And I've been doing it a few months now.
And, and can you clarify how that works with Twitter ads? Is it just getting people to, is it sponsoring your Twitter profile and just getting them to follow you, or is it specifically an ad saying, "Hey, just subscribe to your newsletter to the Rollup right in the ad"?
Yeah. It's a direct ad that just I have different images and different text in there, and it just says, "Hey, look it, I've got this newsletter. Maybe you want to subscribe to it." And yeah, people will click a link and go to my landing page and subscribe, and that's how it works.
Hmm.
And then along the way, some people will also subscribe to my Twitter account, which is why I have
Hmm.
2,300 followers now. I never asked for any of that. It doesn't really make much difference to me at all. But
Gotcha.
yeah, that is one side effect, is that you accumulate a Twitter following as you do this.
And then just so if I'm understanding it correctly, right, they click your ad on Twitter, they subscribe to your newsletter, and then that's when Spark Loops comes in from the other side, and then other newsletters are recommended, and then you're being paid by other newsletters. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So someone clicks the link in Twitter, they go to my landing page, they put in their email address and click subscribe, and then a box will pop up that says, "Hey, here are these 5 other newsletters. Maybe you want to check them out." And then they can decide, "No, I don't want any of them, or I want a couple, or all of them." And then so I'm referring subscribers to other newsletters.
Very cool.
And then
Um,
only maybe 50% of them will convert anyways. So it's not, after you send a subscriber to that newsletter, there are other criteria, like they have to open 3 emails to count as a referral
okay.
or something. So only about 50% of the people who send to other newsletters will actually earn your money.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, right? They may not be very engaged where they sign up for yours, they sign up for someone else's, but then they never open the newsletters that are sent for that other newsletter, and therefore it doesn't count. Huh. Okay, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Um, and then are you able to share or willing to share kind of where you are in terms of subscribers? And then as you mentioned, you want to do this for a long time, or what are your growth goals? I mean, looking maybe we could do 1 year down the line and then 5 years down the line. I mean, how big do you want to grow this thing? What are your ambitions?
Yeah, so I have 14,900 subscribers right now. Um, which that sounds, it used to sound like a lot to me. Now it doesn't sound like so much anymore. Uh, I don't, I don't have timeline goals because it's almost impossible to predict, uh,
Hmm.
to put a timeline on it, because things could go really well with paid acquisition or things could go to crap anytime. So it's really hard to put a timeline on it, but I would like to get to 100,000 subscribers. And if I can get to 100,000 subscribers on the roll up, that's giving me a very decent income. I'm not gonna go out and buy a Ferrari, but that's enough to move back to America and live a decent life. And that's
Hmm.
that's what I would like to do.
And are you willing to share? Or can we kind of get into? Okay, so you acquire people, right? I think you said Spark Loops, you're paying like $2 to acquire someone. What is your acquisition cost through Twitter currently for one subscriber?
I don't really want to share that.
Okay.
That's something I'd rather keep to myself. I
Yeah.
will. I will say that Spark Loops. I'll tell you what I was paying in Spark Loops when I started. I was paying $3 per subscriber, but it very quickly went down. There was a lot of newsletters realized this opportunity with Spark Loops, and a lot of newsletters signed up and started referring people. So the supply um, really blossomed. And so by the
Hmm.
time I was finished with Spark Loops, I was only paying $1 per subscriber, which is actually pretty good. That was really good.
Okay.
Considering that also only paying $1 per engaged subscriber. So if a newsletter refers 100 people to me, 50 of them are never going to qualify. So I was only paying $1 for the 50 people that actually opened my newsletter and were engaging with it. So
Okay.
it was actually pretty good, honestly.
And then again, maybe we can kind of shift to the revenue side and you can share as much as you want, but I'm just curious, we've talked about it a lot, is advertising. Is that really the core and only revenue stream for a newsletter? I'm thinking maybe obviously you could do your own affiliate links within the newsletter or some sort of membership or paid newsletter. Are those kind of the three channels for revenue? Or is there anything I'm missing there?
No, I think you got it. So over on Substack, I've never had an advertisement on there, and I never will for my long form newsletter. And so that's I actually just turned on the paid feature a few days ago, so people can pay to subscribe to that, and then I'll put a certain number of articles behind a paywall. So that's one thing I'm doing on Substack. That's one way to generate revenue. And then on the Rollup, yeah, so advertising is the main way. I do put affiliate links in. I have a little sponsored section where I put like an affiliate link to another newsletter. And that's, you can make a little bit of money doing that, not a lot. But advertising is, that's the main revenue source that I'm looking at right now. And that there,
And
I could do a paid feature in the future, but I'm
yeah.
not sure about that.
Um, and then I don't know if you'd be able to share this either, but maybe just like generally speaking, is there a number that advertisers typically pay if you say, hey, I'm going to have this many eyeballs on your ad, and therefore it's X per eyeball, or does it really depend on the newsletter and the advertiser, etc.?
Yeah, it gets really complicated here. Well, maybe not complicated. It gets hard to quantify because there are a lot of different ways you can measure what an advertiser is willing to pay. Traditionally, you would do CPM, which is you pay X amount for 1,000 views, but that doesn't always translate well to a newsletter because so I have 14,000 subscribers right now, and that's I have that number because I've weeded out a lot of unengaged subscribers. And if I hadn't taken those unengaged subscribers out, I would have 25,000 or almost 30,000 subscribers right now. And I could have charged a lot more for CPM, but nobody would have clicked on anything and it wouldn't have earned the advertisers money. So there are just a lot of different ways that advertisers will pay you and determine how much to pay you. And what I've gone with is just the average number of clicks that you can expect to get. So I track every single advertisement and I keep track of like the minimum number of clicks that an ad has ever gotten, the maximum, and then the average. And so I can present that to an advertiser and say, hey, this is probably what you're going to get depending on how well your ad does. And yeah,
Hmm.
so clicks is what I do. Other newsletters do unique opens. Yeah, it all depends. It really
Hmm.
depends.
And can you speak to, I think you talked about it a little bit earlier about how you're approaching advertisers or are advertisers approaching you? I mean, how are you selecting who you're going to feature in the newsletter? And then is it typically just one ad per newsletter and they're kind of the feature advertisement or sponsor, or how does that work as well?
Yeah. So I have the one featured ad, and I wanted that because, yeah, I just wanted the advertiser to have the only ad in the newsletter. So all the focus is on them. And I only turned on advertising about 2 months ago. So I'm still kind of figuring this out. My initial advertisers have all come from the newsletter or from my Twitter following. I've posted about ads there. But in the future, I'm going to start reaching out to other companies. One thing I do is I follow a lot of different finance newsletters myself, and I look at all of the advertisers who put ads in their newsletters, and I'm tracking all of them, and I'm figuring out email addresses. And so at some point, I'm going to start emailing all of them to see if they want to advertise in my newsletter. And there are also ad platforms that I can post on, and once I get big enough, once I'm charging enough for ads, you can also have an agency source advertisements for you, which is something I would love to do. The typical fee is 30% of the ad revenue, which sounds like a lot, but if I can just have ads referred to me without doing any work, I think that's really worth it.
Yeah.
But I'm not large enough right now to justify that because they'd be earning like $30 per ad, which is just not worth the work for them. So that's something you can do once you get larger.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Again, as you grow, you can outsource more and then you focus on growing more and ideally it like compounds on itself because you're not, it's kind of the saying of like working on the business as opposed to working in the business, right? So,
Yeah, that's exactly it, right?
hmm no, I think, I mean, I've learned a lot just in this short conversation, but maybe for anyone out there that you've talked about it a little bit, it's, non-mainstream media for people interested in investing in the markets. But outside of that, what is your pitch? For someone listening to this, why should they subscribe to the Rollup to your newsletter?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of newsletters out there. There's a lot of investing newsletters out there that share content from like CNBC or the Wall Street Journal or the FT or Yahoo Finance or wherever. There's just not many newsletters that I'm aware of that share content from non-traditional sources like Substack, or I find a lot of research reports that I post in the roll up, websites that you've never heard of. I've listed a whole bunch of websites since I've started this newsletter. I've listed a whole bunch of websites that people have found really interesting. So yeah, you're just getting content that you wouldn't find otherwise from traditional outlets. It's new stuff and it's interesting.
Yeah, I think that's smart, right? You have a niche there. It's kind of a way to stand out or attract people that are subscribed to other financial newsletters.
Yeah, I think so. I haven't really seen anyone else doing what I'm doing, so I do think it's a unique prospect.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you said you've been doing this for about 14 months. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
And do you have any regrets going back to when you started, and saying, "Hey, why did I get myself into this?" Or, I mean, on the surface, I hear about what you're doing and your strategies, and you have 14,000 subscribers. It all seems pretty good on the surface, but I'm just curious, any regrets?
Yeah, yeah, I would say I wasted I wasted thousands of dollars early on when I didn't really understand spark loops and paid growth. I
Mm,
was paying too much for subscribers who are not engaged. And I was just throwing money around. I was so excited to have paid growth because I just had organic growth for about 6 months, which is very slow. It's like one subscriber a day, basically.
mhm,
So
mhm.
when I got into it, I was so excited. I was just like, hey, take my money, send me subscribers. This is amazing. Like 50 subscribers in a day. I couldn't believe it. And so I was just chucking money at it because I was so excited. And that was stupid. I wasted thousands of dollars. just not being discerning enough, not cutting out bad sources of growth. And so I would say to anyone who is thinking about doing paid growth, it can feel exciting at first, but you have to be disciplined and be careful about what you spend your money on. And I promise you that there are lots of opportunities to get readers, to do paid growth, and you don't have to get them all at once. Create a system to do it smart and not waste money. Be careful.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's good advice. And then maybe if you can expand on that a bit to like anybody that's listening, right? And going back in your story, you tried teaching Russian, freelancing, and now you're doing the newsletter. I mean, what recommendation do you have for anyone out there that wants to start their own business or side hustle or just work for themselves? How can they get started?
I would say the one piece of advice I would give to people, I do give to people, is to pick a skill and stay with it. Find one skill and get really good with it over the course of your lifetime, basically. So even though I've done all of this crazy stuff like teaching Russian and traveled all over the world, and I've had a whole bunch of different jobs, the one skill that I always stuck with was writing. And that's something that I've put 5 or 6 thousand hours into, and I'll reach 10,000 hours at some point. And that's a skill that I can always fall back on, and it's kind of
Hmm.
my it's my backup. So I would just say find a skill and stick with it. Even if you're going and doing all of these different things, you have to have something steady, some foundation in your life that you can improve upon continuously over the years.
Yeah, no, I think that's really sound advice. And I think a lot of people, right, focusing on one skill forever can be kind of boring, for lack of a better word, and people can kind of get shiny object syndrome and bounce around,
Mm.
which I think you said it well. Like it can hurt you more than it can help you. So I think that's great advice. Um, I think we can close out here. So I'll give you the floor to close us out. Any final thoughts, and then again, just let people know where they can find you and subscribe to your various newsletters.
Yeah, sure. So if you just Google the Rollup, it should come up, and you can subscribe if you're into investing content, if you like the markets. Um, I would just say that if you're thinking about doing any kind of content creation, like you have a YouTube channel, I have a newsletter, any kind of content creation, just create a plan to stick with it, because it's going to be harder than you think. Everything about it is going to be harder than you think. Everything about doing this newsletter has been about twice as hard as I thought it would be. And I'm
Hmm.
continually getting slapped in the face by stuff. Every time I think something is going to be easy, it's not easy, and it just sucks. And that's just part of the game. So you have to understand that it's going to be difficult, and you have to stick with it anyways and create a plan to keep going, because it's
No.
not going to be easy, but it is rewarding.
Yeah, no, I think those are great words to end on. And hey, I know the feeling a little bit. I'm just getting started over here. So I appreciate you
Yeah.
taking the time, and I've learned a lot as well. And I haven't had an idea about newsletters, but you kind of gave me a lens into that world, and super beneficial. So I'll also put links to in the description for this for people to subscribe to any of your newsletters. And hey, I thank you again for taking the time. And I think you're in the morning over there in Bali, so I hope you have a good day ahead of you.
Yeah. It's going to be good. Thanks, Connor.
Yep. Thanks, Sam.
All right. See ya.